That is why I have to leave. You understand?
Well, okay,
so
but you came out here. It wasn't too urgent, or you wouldn't have come out here.
Well, I was concerned for the safety.
I was concerned for the safety of my family, and your officers threatened them, and I want some disciplinary action taken on that front.
Everything is going good. If you would please just maintain your distance where you're at right now, I would greatly appreciate it. I'm going to go ahead and go.
What I want you to think about tonight, I know that you have this idea that you do your job, but just remember, there's no just doing your job. There's right or wrong. You took an oath to this Constitution, whether you carry a copy or not.
Okay, well,
and this Constitution's
right
the law.
Is an opinion, okay? So
no, it's
harassing police officers is probably considered wrong to most people. We're just trying to do our job.
I'm not harassing anyone. I'm observing you.
You're trying to make our job harder, okay? That's
actually, I made no contact.
Okay.
You realize that your officers contacted me. I didn't endanger them. I did not endanger them.
But
I was well out of distance.
They didn't do anything like that.
I wasn't giving them that option.
All I wanted you to do is just keep your distance where you're at.
My distance was kept. I was 10 feet away, sir. The difference between where I am now and there was nonsensical. You just wanted to exert your authority.
I just want you to stay about this distance.
I'm not. Okay. The only reason I moved is because you guys threatened my family with violence.
Okay, we didn't threaten anything.
Yes, you did. That's what an arrest is.
You were threatened that you'd be placed under arrest for interfering with the police investigation.
And if I had attempted to defend myself, I wasn't interfering with nothing. You guys were leaving your police investigation.
I'm trying to make sure that no interference happens. I'm trying to.
The only one that's interfered here, sir, is you. The only one that's violated their oath is your officers, and that's what you need to think about. If you got a call, I don't want to keep you from it. You better get going.
I am. You have a nice night.
You too.
Sergeant Park left the scene without further incident, and Mr. Seam was not cited or detained. Not long after this interaction took place, Mr. Seam left the United States and currently resides in Mexico. To get the full details of Mr. Seam's story, I would suggest taking a look at his channel, which is linked in the description below. Overall, Officer Garcia and Officer Cantrell get a C- for threatening to arrest Mr. Seam for filming their interaction, failing to offer Mr. Seam an alternative location for filming, and neglecting to employ any measure of de-escalation at any point. Over the years, filming the police has become more normalized, but the pervasiveness of First Amendment activism is still struggling to reach the rural areas of America, and this interaction is a testament to that. An officer's inexperience is often a major factor in determining the outcome of any audit, and the attitude of these two officers could likely be attributed to rarely having dealt with being recorded. However, that does not excuse their actions, and there are many aspects of this encounter that could have been handled with a higher degree of professionalism and respect for the law. It's worth noting that the officers chose to call their commanding officer before taking any action, and although they issued idle threats, the officers waited for their supervisor to arrive before moving forward with those threats. Contacting a supervisor was the right thing to do in this situation, and as much as the officers got wrong during this interaction, they did manage to get one thing right. Sergeant Park gets an A+ for setting aside his ego and approaching Mr. Seam with a
family with violence.
Okay, we didn't threaten anything.
Yes, you did. That's what an arrest is.
Description below. Overall, Officer Garcia and Officer Cantrell get a C- for threatening to arrest Mr. Seam for filming their interaction, failing to offer Mr. Seam an alternative location for filming, and neglecting to employ any measure of de-escalation at any point. Over the years, filming the police has become more normalized, but the pervasiveness of First Amendment activism is still struggling to reach the rural areas of America, and this interaction is a testament to that. An officer's inexperience is often a major factor in determining the outcome of any audit, and the attitude of these two officers could likely be attributed to rarely having dealt with being recorded. However, that does not excuse their actions, and there are many aspects of this encounter that could have been handled with a higher degree of professionalism and respect for the law. It's worth noting that the officers chose to call their commanding officer before taking any action, and although they issued idle threats, the officers waited for their supervisor to arrive before moving forward with those threats. Contacting a supervisor was the right thing to do in this situation, and as much as the officers got wrong during this interaction, they did manage to get one thing right. Sergeant Park gets an A+ for setting aside his ego and approaching Mr. Seam with a measure of objectivity, engaging in a peaceful dialogue with Mr. Seam, and making a genuine attempt to listen to and understand Mr. Seam's concerns. Sergeant Park remained cordial and professional throughout his conversation with Mr. Seam, and instead of blindly attempting to justify the actions of his officers, he took the time to address Mr. Seam's concerns in a respectful and authentic way. The sergeant even went as far as discussing philosophical issues of policing that extended far beyond the context of this interaction, and did not take offense to any of Mr. Seam's points. I commend Sergeant Park for his patience and dedication to peacefully resolving this encounter, and for his ability to set aside the ideological barriers of being a police officer to have a sincere conversation with Mr. Seam. The sergeant's demeanor throughout this interaction demonstrates the notion that not all police officers are consumed by their ego and blind loyalty to their department, and there are officers who wish to maintain a positive relationship with members of their community. That is certainly a message that could use more attention in such a polarized society. Mr. Seam gets a B+. Because although Mr. Seam was well within his rights to film the clued officers, he misrepresented the case law surrounding recording the police, exaggerated the implications of being arrested, and maintained a relatively hostile demeanor throughout the encounter. A threat of arrest is not equivalent to a threat to life, and Mr. Seam's assertion that the officers threatened his life is inaccurate. Although the officers were wrong to issue a threat of arrest, Mr. Seam overstated the gravity of their intentions, and police officers are often criticized for using the very same tactic of distorting the truth that Mr. Seam employed here. Mr. Seam also said that the Supreme Court had upheld the right to record police, but the Supreme Court has never ruled on the issue because the right has been so thoroughly established among the circuit courts. Misrepresenting case law does nothing to advance a movement or educate citizens or police officers, and only serves to discredit the movement as a whole. While I commend Mr. Seam for taking the time to record the traffic stop, I do not agree with his tactics or certain elements of his philosophy. All citizens are entitled to exercising their rights as they see fit, so long as it falls within the scope of constitutional protection. But maintaining a radicalized perspective will likely degrade the credibility of your actions and craft a narrative that fails to see the whole picture. Nonetheless, Mr. Seam's story is worth looking into, and I encourage you all to take a look at his channel and draw your own conclusions about his conduct. Let us know if there's an interaction or legal topic you would like us to discuss in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more police interaction content.
It is me, the one who slays all. No cap. Give your ass a power now. What the? Are you just gonna jump at me like that, bro? Man, you know what? I'm about to squat up on your ass. I'm about to show you what it like if you're good in the hood, bro. You coming at me like that, bro? I'm gonna knock your ass way down a few pads, bro. Hand over your soul. You won't need it anymore.
I suggest a tactical retreat. I will take us to a small alcove near the waystone that enabled your previous exodus.
Son. Save your strength, Father. We'll have time to speak later. Wait. My sword. Fatebringer. I will have need of it soon.
I believe this concludes our business arrangement. The waystone is just up that way.
Give your ass a power nap. Ooh. We are paladins. We will ride. You dare take away my paladin steed?
Or to waste your breath. Procure something of value. Farewell. Please, do not tell anyone you saw me. And if you find yourself leaping into this maelstrom of gloom again, I do hope you'll bring along something interesting to trade.
No, you can't cook him.
Your main priority. So I would expect you, if the mayor of the town asks you to do something that's unconstitutional, I'd expect you to tell him no. And I don't know if you would or not. And I'm not asking you to answer me right now, but that's a situation you might wind up in one day. Maybe you've been in that situation. But I would hope that morals and character would prevail in that situation.
No,
for you.
You can't cook him.
Right, I don't know if you would or not, and I don't. Maybe you don't even. Maybe none of us know what would happen until we're in that situation. But something to think about. That's all. Because you're in a position to do something about it. So we all are, but you're in a different kind of position than I'm in. So, and I think if we all figure out how to work together, there are bad guys in this world.
I believe that there are criminals and there are people that make mistakes. And the majority of them make mistakes.
There are criminals, there are people that make mistakes, there are good police officers, and there are some police officers out there who are destroying the fabric of society.
And that's unfortunately
that
affects all of us.
So we rely on someone in your position to make sure that's not happening in your jurisdiction and where you live. That's all. And we ask you to hold up the Constitution and honor your oath. That's it. It's the only request I have of you.
The sheriffs obviously are very strong on the Constitution.
Right.
We obviously defend it.
Well, but I understand nobody wants to go home and tell their wife there's no money to go on vacation this year. So you kind of gotta. It's a fine line you walk, and it's a difficult choice to make. But I can promise you, just from my experience in this world, from my perspective, if you make the right decision, you'll never be sorry. Mm-hmm. You might have to live with a wrong decision for a very long time. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's it. So, but while we're both agreeing with each other, I'll shake your hand, Evan. Okay. Wish you a wonderful day. Stay safe.
Yeah. Thank you.
We appreciate you.
Appreciate it.
All right. You have a wonderful day. And just let the ladies know when you speak to them. Didn't mean to put anybody in fear or anything, but if you explain to them maybe what we're doing and the reasons behind what we're doing, maybe people tend to take that type of explanation from law enforcement with a little more belief than they do coming from me, because they don't know who I am, but they trust you.
Yep.
Okay.
Will do.
You have a wonderful day.
Okay, you too.
Thank you, sir. Well, all right, guys. I think that went well. I think the sheriff here definitely. I think we had a meeting of the minds at the end of it all. I think we might have found that middle ground we're always looking for, and I think he is probably inside explaining to these ladies what we were doing and just quelling their fears and letting them know what happened. And we were able to go back in and leave on of our own accord, not be chased out, not be thrown out. And that's the point. So we had the conversation we're always looking to have. It's very important to be talking about these things.
Move the driver. Yeah.
Officers to locate
It's a New Jersey law.
troopers and the New Jersey State Police as a whole for $900,000.
Can't even watch that one. It hurt my sensibilities, my delicate sensibilities. I'll have you know that while I was awaiting summoning, I was practicing the art of spitting flames. You did!
Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions. Join us as we explore.
I'll have you know that while I was The art of summoning.
Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions. This episode covers identification laws, obstructing justice, and civilian
my boy's
rights,
back!
and comes to us from the Southern Illinois Public Observers channel. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. Before we dive into the interaction, I would like to welcome all of you to the year 2021, and I thought I would narrate the first script of the new year just to kick things off on the right foot. The ATA narrator will return in the next episode, but so many of you have requested to hear the old voice of ATA, so this episode is dedicated to all of you. I would like to invite you all to check out the ATA Patreon page, where I post ad-free and uncensored episodes of ATA, along with a ton of other content that you can't find on YouTube. I plan to post on Patreon much more often in 2021, and I would love to see you all there. Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions. This episode covers identification laws, obstruct...
But my private platform!
The Arbiter sees all truths.
Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions. This episode covers identification laws, obstructing justice, and civilian rights, and comes to us from the Southern Illinois Public Observers channel. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. Before we dive into the interaction, I would like to welcome all of you to the year 2021, and I thought I would narrate the first script of the new year just to kick things off on the right foot. The ATA narrator will return in the next episode, but so many of you have requested to hear the old voice of ATA, so this episode is dedicated to all of you. I would like to invite you all to check out the ATA Patreon page, where I post ad-free and uncensored episodes of ATA, along with a ton of other content that you can't find on YouTube. I plan to post on Patreon much more often in 2021, and I would love to see you all there. Now let's dive right in and audit the interaction. On March 8th, 2020, Centralia, Illinois resident Aaron Flanagan was riding along 13th Street in Centralia when he and his daughter discovered an intoxicated man lying near a railroad crossing. Mr. Flanagan's daughter immediately called 911, and the two waited there for help to arrive. Officer Billy White of the Centralia Police Department arrived on the scene moments later.
I don't know what happened. We was driving by, the man's laying here. He says somebody hit him with a car. He's obviously been drinking, but he needs some help, so I didn't want to leave until somebody got here.
I appreciate you. And when you came here, you didn't see anybody else around, or?
You know what? There was a white vehicle on the tracks, and I think they saw him about the same time we did.
Okay.
But they went off.
But you didn't see a vehicle around or anything like that?
Anything.
Okay.
But his head's all busted off, and he said he hurt.
Why don't you guys go ahead and pull up to give room for the ambulance?
Oh, no, we go on. We just wait.
Well, I need your information real quick.
What information?
Just your information real quick. Give me 1 second. Can you just pull the vehicle up for a second?
It's not my car.
Jesus Christ. Give me your IDs and I'll run it now. Everybody's got to make rocket science. You got your ID on you?
It's not my car.
You have your ID on you.
No, I do not. Why are you yelling at me whenever I'm
Because you're not listening. You're not listening. I'm trying to get the ambulance here so we can get off the railroad
And
tracks.
we're going home.
I need your ID.
I don't have an ID.
What's your name?
I'm not giving it to you.
I'm going to put your hands behind your back. I'm going to arrest you.
Officer White first demands to see Mr. Flanagan's ID. When Mr. Flanagan says he does not have his ID, Officer White demands his name. Mr. Flanagan refuses to provide his name, and Officer White arrests him. Section 5107-14 of Chapter 725 of the Illinois Compiled Statutes gives police officers the authority to demand an individual's name when the officer reasonably infers from the circumstances that the person is committing, is about to commit, or has committed a criminal offense. Officer White did not have the authority to demand Mr. Flanagan's name under this statute because there was no evidence that Mr. Flanagan was involved in criminal activity. Section 531-4.5 of Chapter 720 of the Illinois Compiled Statutes states that an individual commits the Class A misdemeanor of obstructing identification if he or she intentionally or knowingly furnishes a false or fictitious name to a peace officer when the peace officer has good cause to believe the citizen is a witness to a criminal offense. Mr. Flanagan did not violate this statute because he did not give a false name. He simply refused to provide his name. Even if Mr. Flanagan had intentionally provided a false or fictitious name, a court would likely conclude that Officer White did not have good cause to believe that Mr. Flanagan witnessed a crime. As explained by the Illinois 2nd District Appellate Court in the 2019 case of People v. Espinilla Juarez, good cause is the functional equivalent of probable cause. As we've discussed many times on ATA, probable cause only exists when the facts and circumstances warrant a reasonable belief that a crime has been committed. In this situation, Mr. Flanagan tells the officer that he didn't see anything and that when he arrived, the potentially injured individual was already lying on the side of the road. While the individual claimed to have been hit by a car, he was intoxicated, and the video does not show any immediate apparent evidence that he had been hit. It would be more than a stretch for a court to conclude that these facts and circumstances warranted a reasonable belief that Mr. Flanagan had witnessed a crime.
And let's make everything difficult, please. You want to go sit in the county jail because you want to be an idiot?
I don't have an ID on me. Just like
No, you don't want to give me your name, so you said arrest you. So good Lord. Let's make it difficult. Makes sense.
I want to see the supervisor.
Put him in your car. Pat him down and put him in your car. Yes, you have. Obstructing justice.
When Mr. Flanagan asks if he has committed a crime, Officer White tells him that he committed the crime of obstructing justice. Section 531-4 of Chapter 720 of the Illinois Compiled Statutes states that an individual obstructs justice when intending to prevent the apprehension or obstruction of the prosecution or defense of any citizen, he or she knowingly destroys, alters, conceals, or disguises physical evidence, plants false evidence, furnishes false information, induces a witness having knowledge material to the subject at issue to leave the state or conceal himself or herself, or leaves the state or conceals himself or herself when possessing knowledge material to the subject at issue. Nothing in this statute comes close to describing Mr. Flanagan's behavior or his apparent intent. Section 531-1 of Chapter 720 creates a separate offense for resisting or obstructing a peace officer. A citizen commits this offense if he or she knowingly resists or obstructs a peace officer's performance of any authorized act within his or her official capacity. Because Officer White did not have the authority to demand Mr. Flanagan's name, Mr. Flanagan did not resist or obstruct Officer White's performance of an authorized act when he refused to provide his name. Finally, Section 531-8 of Chapter 720 criminalizes the act of refusing to aid an officer. This statute only applies if a citizen refuses or knowingly fails to reasonably aid a police officer in apprehending an individual the officer is authorized to apprehend, or in preventing an individual from committing an offense. Outside of the specific circumstances described in this statute, individuals generally are not required to assist police officers in conducting investigations.
Yeah, I mean, we're just trying to help. And the guy's yelling at me. That's what's the matter with the police force nowadays, man.
Well, let's get this figured out.
I did absolutely nothing but call to help this guy out, and I'm sitting here in cuffs. That's all I did.
Well, what happened? What happened
I
there?
don't know. We pulled up and the guy's laying in the middle of the road, so we called 911. Asking me for ID, which I told him I do not have, and I haven't been suspected of committing a crime.
What's your name?
It's Aaron.
Okay.
But there's absolutely no reason to ID me when I haven't done anything. I'm just trying to help a guy.
Whenever you called about it, did you?
I didn't even call.
Oh.
My daughter called. I was out there with the man. They pulled up right after he was down. They didn't
okay.
see anything, but just did nothing, man. And then I'm sitting in cuffs because the guys. That's why. I want your supervisor out here, by the way. Get your supervisor.
He's out here.
All right. That's why people record this stuff. You know that, right?
Who is this guy to you, ma'am? Who is he to you?
He's my dad.
Why is he acting like this when I'm trying to get people off the railroad tracks for safety reasons?
I'm sorry.
I just need to know who we are. That's all I'm doing. I just asking him for his name, and he don't want to give it to me.
We were just trying to get this man some help.
Ma'am, I appreciate that, but at the same time, why cause one problem when we're trying to fix another? You know what I'm saying? So, Trey, copy 28 of a witness. Aaron, wait. Aaron, listen, if you want to see, I'll send you to the county jail. I'm asking for your cooperation here.
For what?
I've got squad cars on railroad tracks. I'm trying to get them off of it because you don't want to listen. I'm asking for your cooperation, and you don't want to give it to me.
All my cooperation was calling and getting this man some help.
Okay, so we're going to cause another problem and not clearing the railroad tracks? I'm asking you to pull forward.
My car.
And then I'm asking for your name so you guys can get out of here so we can pull forward.
At all. For no reason. You're
Yeah,
asking
that makes sense. Hit your unlocks on your car. Aaron, I don't know why you'd want to do a good deed and not help me try to just get everybody out of here in a safe area.
You started yelling at me with a bad deal right off the bat, so.
Apparently you don't know what it's like to do this job.
I don't want to.
I get that, but I'm trying to make it safe for everybody showing up here so we're not on railroad tracks and stuff.
You need to get the chip off your shoulder, pal. There's no reason to be rude.
Oh, no, listen, time can kill somebody. You understand that?
I'm not mad. Why are you?
I'm not mad.
Why you keep yelling at me, then?
I'm not yelling.
Not right now.
Time can kill somebody. The matter of seconds can kill somebody.
I have no idea what happened to him, no more than you do.
I understand that. I'm trying to get people off the railroad tracks.
And I'm trying to go home. I just want to help the guy.
Then just help me get to the
I don't owe you anything. I don't know what your problem is.
My problem is...
Guess what? I'm clear, right? I've lived here my entire life. I want your name, your card.
It's Billy White. My badge number's 429.
Because there'll be a complaint filed. I guarantee you.
You know what? If you're going to file a complaint, we'll just charge you. Stay in there.
Officer White admits that he is only charging Mr. Flanagan because he intends to file a complaint against him. When a police officer arrests a citizen for exercising his First Amendment freedom of speech, rather than because the individual actually committed a crime, it is called a retaliatory arrest. The First Amendment prohibits government officials, like police officers, from retaliating against citizens for exercising their First Amendment rights. However, the Constitution itself does not provide any recourse for an individual who has their rights violated by a government official. The Civil Rights Act of 1871 is a federal statute found in Section 1983 of Title 42 of the United States Code. This statute allows individuals to sue government officials for violating their constitutional rights under the color of law. A government official acts under the color of law when they act in their official capacity, such as when a police officer arrests a citizen. In the 2019 case of Nieves versus Bartlett, the U.S. Supreme Court ruled that to succeed in a 1983 claim, the arrested individual must not only prove that they were arrested in retaliation for protected speech, but also that the officer did not have probable cause for the arrest. While it is often challenging for an individual who sues a police officer for a retaliatory arrest to prove that the arrest was in direct retaliation for exercising a protected right, in this situation, Officer White admits multiple times that he is only arresting Mr. Flanagan because he is filing a complaint. Likewise, as we discussed earlier in this episode, Officer White did not have probable cause to arrest Mr. Flanagan because he had not committed any crimes. Under these circumstances, Mr. Flanagan should have a strong case for a Section 1983 claim.
We'll give you something to file a complaint on. Transport this one to the station. He's going to run his mouth and want to file a complaint. I'll give him something to file his complaint on. You can go to the station and bond him out.
Mr. Flanagan was taken to the local police department and essentially forced to listen to Officer White try to explain his actions. Once Officer White realized that he wasn't going to convince Mr. Flanagan that he was wrong, he released Mr. Flanagan. A few days after the encounter, Mr. Flanagan made a public records request for the body camera footage, which prompted Centralia Police Chief Greg Dodson to email the other city leaders informing informing them that he was going to release a statement with the video, and warning them that they would likely endure criticism from the, quote, keyboard warriors. The following day, it was announced that Officer White would be suspended for 5 days and lose his field training officer status, along with being required to attend additional training for sensitivity and anger management. On December 10, 2020, Mr. Flanagan filed a pro se Section 1983 lawsuit against Officer White, Chief Dodson, and the city of Centralia. The lawsuit is still ongoing. Overall, Officer White and the Centralia Police Department get an F for failing to employ any measure of de-escalation, forcing Mr. Flanagan to identify himself when he had committed no crimes, and effectuating a retaliatory arrest in the absence of criminal activity. This is yet another example of an officer who set aside the legality of the situation because his ego was fractured. Officer
huge.
White blatantly conducted
His ego
an
was
illegal
swollen.
arrest, and all of the officers
It was so
involved
big.
allowed it to happen.
She couldn't
Nothing
help but
Officer
take in
White
his
did
seat.
was truly
Wow.
in the interest of safety, and this interaction
That
could have
ego.
ended with the citizen getting a potentially injured man the help he needed and moving on. The misconception that officers have to identify everyone they come into contact with is rampant among the ranks of law enforcement, and the fact that Officer White was serving as a training officer is a clear indicator of why this is such a prevalent issue. Many of the other officers who responded to this interaction were likely trained by Officer White and were probably operating under the very same misconceptions. The department's response was far from adequate, especially considering that this is not the first time Officer White's reckless behavior has ended up in the headlines. In November of 2018, Officer White crashed his patrol vehicle into an unsuspecting student at a local high school while investigating a possible bomb threat. You can find a link to that encounter in the description below. Once again, the department is setting the precedent that officers who commit blatant acts of misconduct will be allowed to continue serving on the force, and this pattern of departments refusing to hold their officers accountable has to end. Mr. Flanagan gets an A+ for maintaining a respectable balance between asserting his rights and complying with the officer's commands, not allowing Officer White to intimidate him, and for following up this interaction with the proper legal action. At no point did Mr. Flanagan commit any crimes, and he was well within his rights to refuse to identify himself. There should never be a circumstance where a citizen ends up arrested for trying to help someone, and this is the second interaction on this channel where this has happened because a witness did not want to identify themselves. Mr. Flanagan's arrest was nothing short of retaliatory, and I have no doubt that he will fare well in the courtroom, even without representation. I commend Mr. Flanagan for having the courage and conviction to stand up for his rights and file a lawsuit. Be sure to give your support to the Southern Illinois Public Observer for sharing this story. You can find a link to his channel in the description below. Let us know if there's an interaction or legal topic you would like us to discuss in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to check out the ATA Patreon page for more police.
Tell me what I want to know, or you're going to jail.
They're evil.
Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions. This episode covers force statements, identification laws, and officer ethics, and is brought to us by Janet O'Brien Spradley's channel. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. Before we dive into the interaction, I would like to invite you all to check out the Audit Patreon page, where I will be launching a new podcast series very soon. I will be sitting down to have in-depth conversations with key figures within the auditing and law enforcement communities about the state of policing, free speech, constitutional awareness, and much more. So, if that is something you may be interested in, hop on over to patreon.com/audittheaudit, or click on the link in the description and join our exclusive community. Now, let's dive right in and audit the interaction. On a September evening in 2017, Texas resident Janet Spradley was on her way home when she spotted a motorist driving erratically somewhere near San Antonio. Mrs. Spradley dialed 911 and began following the driver. Eventually, an officer located the driver, and Mrs. Spradley turned off of the road so that the officers could take over. As she turned around, another officer was approaching, and Mrs. Spradley motioned to the officer, directing him to the erratic driver. Mrs. Spradley continued on her way and pulled over at a nearby gas station. When Mrs. Spradley exited the gas station, she was confronted by Officer Gibson of the San Antonio Police Department.
All I wanted to do was record, all I wanted to do was just to let y'all know that there was somebody driving that was intoxicated. And that's all I wanted to do. I don't want to talk to no cops. I don't want to have my name on any reports or anything.
Officers do not have the authority to force a witness to give a statement, but prosecutors do retain that power once the case has entered the courtroom. Mrs. Spradley had made it abundantly clear that she did not wish to provide a statement to the officer, and this interaction should have ended the moment Mrs. Spradley relayed that to the officer.
Right here. Let me show you. I'll show you myself. Okay?
Yeah, you familiar with Terry versus Ohio?
Okay, ma'am. Again, I'm trying to explain it to you right here. Okay? So Chapter 38, disrupting governmental operations. Okay? Failure to identify. A person commits an offense if he intentionally refuses
I have not committed an offense.
Listen, I am reading it to you, okay? If he intentionally refuses to give his name, residence of address, or date of birth to a peace officer who has lawfully arrested the person and is requesting information, or a person commits an offense if he intentionally gives a false, fictitious name, residence. Okay, so right here under 3, officer requests the information from a person that the peace officer has good cause to believe is a witness to a criminal offense.
Okay, well, I don't know if it was a criminal offense or not.
Okay.
Texas is one of the few states that requires a suspect or citizen to be placed under arrest before they are lawfully obligated to identify themselves to police officers. The statute that Officer Gibson is referring to is Texas Penal Code 38.02, which states exactly what the officer just read. However, Officer Gibson's interpretation of that code is far from accurate. In order for the code to be enforceable to any degree, the person committing the offense must be under arrest. Mrs. Spradley has committed no crimes and is not subject to the enforcement of this code. Furthermore, subsection B3 of the code only applies to arrestees who have intentionally given a false or fictitious name, residence, address, or date of birth to a peace officer. Officer Gibson is attempting to interpret the law as giving him the authority to force witnesses to give a statement to police. But the law is actually designed to hold witnesses accountable for their testimony if they choose to give a statement to the police. Mrs. Spradley did not give any information to Officer Gibson that would apply to the language of Code 38.02, and Mrs. Spradley is not lawfully required to give a statement to Officer Gibson under the authority of Code 38.02 or any other law.
All I saw is that he was leaving.
Okay, well, I do. Alright? And you made it clear to me that you witnessed it, alright?
Okay, but I'm not wanting my name on anything. I already told the lady that I talked to at the dispatch that I didn't want to talk to no cops.
Is this your vehicle, ma'am?
It doesn't matter what my vehicle is. I let the lady dispatch know that I don't want to talk to no cops.
Okay, but I came here looking for you because...
Because why?
Because if we're arresting somebody, ma'am, I would like to have...
I don't want to talk to you. I don't have anything to do with anything. I was just being a good citizen and letting y'all know that somebody was driving and weaving.
George Paul Zebra 2945. Can you tell me who the registered owner is?
You know, this shouldn't be happening at all.
Listen.
This should not be happening. I have not committed a crime. I have not committed any offense. I have not done anything wrong.
That's what I'm trying to explain to you. I have good reason to believe you're a witness to a criminal offense, and you refuse to identify yourself to me.
I don't know if it was criminal or not.
If Officer Gibson is suggesting that he suspects Mrs. Spradley of committing a crime under Code 38.02, then that would entitle Mrs. Spradley to the right to remain silent under the Fifth Amendment, which defeats the officer's goal of this entire interaction. Mrs. Spradley is not legally obligated to speak to Officer Gibson at all, even if she had committed a crime. The Fifth Amendment dictates that citizens may not be forced to incriminate themselves, and if Officer Gibson were to arrest or cite Mrs. Spradley for not providing a statement to officers, then any statement that Mrs. Spradley could provide would become incriminating by its very nature, because it would prove that Mrs. Spradley had violated Officer Gibson's misrepresentation of Code 38.02. Even if Officer Gibson had managed to get Mrs. Spradley to cooperate, it is highly unlikely that her statements would be admissible in court, because Mrs. Spradley would have given those statements under duress.
Not if you think.
And that is witness. That's all I'm doing is I saw him weaving. That's it. See if I ever call anything in again.
Yeah, I found her. She just doesn't want to identify herself.
I don't want to have anything to do with it. I don't have to have anything to do with it. Call your supervisor out here, please. I want a supervisor out here.
Give me just a moment to reason with her. If she doesn't want to, then we'll call it and do it, alright? Listen.
I don't want to talk to you.
Very quick.
I don't have to listen to you.
He's home now.
Okay.
So unless we have a witness statement, he's not going to jail.
Although witnesses are vital assets to law enforcement officers, it is not their responsibility to ensure that a thorough investigation is carried out. As mentioned earlier in this episode, most people are under no legal obligation to report a crime, whether they knew about it in advance, witnessed its commission, or found out about it after the fact. However, there are some exceptions worth noting. For example, in California, citizens can be charged with a crime if they aided or abetted in its commission, but did not actually commit the crime themselves. Section 31 of the California Penal Code describes the phrase aiding and abetting as meaning that a citizen assisted another person in committing a crime. Prosecutors can charge an individual as an aider and abetter if they knew about the perpetrator's illegal plan, intentionally encouraged and or facilitated that plan, and aided, promoted, or instigated in the crime's commission. California also has mandatory reporting laws on the books, which dictate that certain individuals, such as police officers, teachers, and doctors, are required to report instances where they have a reasonable suspicion that child abuse or neglect has occurred. Many other states have similar laws, but none of them require individuals to report crimes that they had no part in themselves. Mrs. Spradley did her due diligence by reporting the crime to the police and making sure that the officers were able to locate the suspect. Officer Gibson does not have the authority or the ethical superiority to compel Mrs. Spradley to do anything more than what she had already done.
Now we have pretty good reason.
Well, I'm sorry y'all didn't get there further sooner.
Was probably driving around drunk.
Okay.
But it didn't happen in our presence, so.
Well, then I'm sorry.
So he gets away with possibly driving while intoxicated.
I'm sorry. I don't want to have anything to do with it. No, I'm not going to be a witness to anything.
Okay.
No. I don't want to have anything to do with it.
All right.
It's not my fault.
Go ahead.
I did what I was supposed to do as a good citizen, and that's it. It's not my fault that he's home already. I told the lady dispatch I do not want to have anything to do with the call. I don't want to talk to you. I don't have to. And you have no right to ask my ID or anything. I have not committed a crime. I have not committed a crime.
Listen to me.
If you hadn't found me, what would you didn't? If you hadn't found me, then what? You wouldn't have a witness anyway.
No, that's exactly where we are.
Okay.
You stopped your vehicle. We're pointing me over there.
Okay,
Otherwise, I have no clue what you looked like, what you drove.
Okay, exactly. So what do you need me now for?
Nothing now, but.
Okay, thank you.
He's getting cut loose.
Thank you.
Mrs. Spradley was allowed to go free, and Officer Gibson left the scene without further incident. Overall, Officer Gibson gets an F for misrepresenting the language of Code 38.2, attempting to force Mrs. Spradley to give a statement, and focusing his attention on securing an arrest rather than building a legitimate case. Forced statements are not reliable sources of information due to the psychological context in which they are formed. People will say whatever they have to say to secure their safety and freedom. And forcing a citizen to make a statement against their will is a waste of time and valuable resources, and only serves to build a case that will be torn to shreds inside a courtroom. Officer Gibson was so preoccupied with securing the erratic driver's arrest that he did not consider how his actions would reflect in the courtroom. Although the officers were not able to secure an arrest that night, Mrs. Spradley did provide them with vital information that they could use to make contact with the driver and determine the cause of their behaviors. Instead of thanking Mrs. Spradley for what she did do, Officer Gibson chose to threaten her for what she didn't do, effectively severing an increasingly vital relationship between the local police department and a concerned citizen. Mrs. Spradley gets an A for remaining calm, disputing the legitimacy of the officer's claims, and remaining vigilant about her constitutional rights, despite being threatened with arrest or citation. Mrs. Spradley likely walked away from this encounter with nothing more than a distrust of the SAPD. And as she admitted in the video, Officer Gibson's tactics will discourage her from calling 911 in the future. It is extremely important for members of law enforcement to establish trust and a productive repertoire with members of their community. And Officer Gibson's actions produce the opposite effect. Mrs. Spradley's relentless disputes and constitutional awareness served her well during this encounter, and I commend her for her ability to remain calm but tenacious throughout the interaction. Let us know if there is an interaction or legal topic you would like us to discuss in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and be sure to like and subscribe for more police interaction content.
Constructs failed to finish you, and so did the mall. How disappointing. Your schemes have brought about your own ruin. Now we will end you. Foolish Mograine, always valuing loyalty over might. But victory lies in one's choice of allies. And with their help, I now claim the mantle of Margrave. I will bury my blade in your skull, traitor! For Crexus!
I am out of range.
I bested Crexus himself! You two are nothing. We will avenge him, here and now! All the houses of Maldraxxus stand against you!
I must get closer. I am out of range.
More weapons! With me! The seat of the Primus is under siege. We must defend it! Blood and thunder.
Loktar
my weapon, or I will bury my sword in your chest. You are nothing more than chattel before my greatness.
Straight, you hold the line. Open the door.
You will not have victory this day.
Slay the mortal! Bring me that rune blade!
Raise your swords, champions. For Maldraxxus! The fleet of the Primus is ours! Strike twice!
Your presence within my sanctum means a darkness has fallen upon Maldraxxus and all the realms of death. Ages ago, the Eternal Ones punished our brother Zoval for his treachery. He was bound within the inescapable maw to be forevermore its jailer. Now I fear that Zoval did not act alone. I suspect he had ancient allies, and will seek to win others to his cause. That you are hearing this message means my suspicions prove true. Zoval has forged his chains into a weapon and brought about my defeat. There is but one hope to save the Shadowlands. The Eternal Ones must stand together once more before the jailer escapes the maw. Bring my warning to the Archon, the Winter Queen, and the Sire. They must see to our defenses. Do not let Zoval reach the Sepulchre. The Arbiter is the final key. Protect her, or all is lost.
Eternal Ones. Jailer. This is a dire message. Return to Ouroboros. Inform them that Maldraxxus will not strike at the other realms again. Our war lies within.
Reporting for duty.
brains. You think you can just run all over me and take my brains from me? Nobody takes my brains from me.
Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we... Welcome to Audit the Audit, where we sort out the who and what and the right and wrong of police interactions. This episode covers panhandling, identification laws, and reasonable suspicion, and is brought to us by Honor Your Oath Civil Rights Investigations channel. Be sure to check out the description below and give them the credit that they deserve. Sometime around December 1st, 2020, YouTuber and First Amendment auditor Jeff Gray was standing on a public sidewalk outside of the Citizens First Bank on Main Street in Lady Lake, Florida. Mr. Gray was holding a sign that read, "God bless the homeless," and was spreading this message to other citizens as they passed by. Eventually, multiple citizens called the Lady Lake Police Department and reported Mr. Gray's conduct as suspicious and accused him of panhandling.
Lieutenant Sheriff's Office, Lacey. Yeah, Tony Lacey, this is Citizens First Bank here at 1129 Main Street. Okay. We have the bus terminal across from our drive-through here, and we have a gentleman out here with a hoodie on, shades, holding up a sign. The girls say something about homeless. The girls are feeling...
Click that link before it's too late.
Crime? What was my crime? Please tell me the charge that I committed.
Charge 214. Can you come to my 20?
Please tell me the crime.
Van Ellen and the individual responding to an emergency call, in pursuit of an actual or suspected violator of the law, responding to a fire alarm, or escorting a funeral procession may disregard certain traffic codes within reason. However, subsection 2 of that code states that the driver of the emergency vehicle must have their emergency lights on while doing so. It is impossible to know for sure whether Trooper Van Ellen had her emergency lights on, but based on the conversation between the trooper and the individual she stopped, it does not appear as though she did. Trooper Van Ellen also admits later in the video that she was in fact speeding.
Please tell me the NRS code that states that, or the DMV codes and traffic laws that state that you can do that.
Okay, but look.
No, please say that to me. I'm invoking my Fifth Amendment right. Do you know what my Fifth Amendment right is?
No, I don't. Tell me.
Okay, you're an officer of law. Fifth Amendment right states that when I invoke that, whatever charge or crime you're committing me of, you have to go ahead and state that and show it to me therein.
The Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution established many precedents in regards to both criminal and civil legal proceedings, such as the right to remain silent, the right to due process, the doctrine of double jeopardy, and many others. But the Fifth Amendment does not dictate that law enforcement officers must inform citizens of why they are being stopped. In fact, no laws or constitutional amendments require officers to articulate their suspicions or reasons for detainment to citizens or suspects. While it is true that under the Terry Doctrine, officers must be able to articulate specific facts that led them to make an arrest or effectuate a detention, they are not required to verbalize those facts to anyone outside of a courtroom.
Okay.
So please tell me the NRS code that states that you're allowed to go faster than 65 unless it is an emergency.
Trying to enforce public safety because my radar was flashing 75, 78, 79. So somebody up there is speeding. And 9 times out of 10 when they're speeding, they're making unsafe lane changes, right?
Okay, you were way behind me, man. I saw you long ago, and you came really quick up on me. And
maybe
you kept going faster.
Maybe because you were doing My cruise control set at 70.
Ma'am, I have a breathalyzer, okay? It records everything, okay? So it records my speed. I stay at 65. I use my cruise control.
Okay, so I'm glad that you do your speed limit and all that, but I'm just trying to let you know that my radar is flashing 78.
Okay. So again, tell me please.
You can get me from 147.
Please tell me what crime I committed. Or what you're charging me with. So then I do not have to give you my ID or identify myself because I've not committed a crime. No, I do not. I have not committed a crime and I'm not under arrest. It states it in the law.
Although Nevada is a stop and identify state, officers are still required to have reasonable suspicion of a crime
people need to start killing
they
these
may
idiots.
demand identification from a suspect. Trooper Van Ellen stated that she only stopped the individual to have a conversation, and while the law does permit her to lie about her reasoning, the rest of the video clarifies that her motives for the stop were exactly that. If the detention were to be challenged in court, it would require little effort from Trooper Van Ellen to justify her stop by some other means. As noted by Justice D. Arthur Kelsey of the Supreme Court of Virginia, quote, "So dense is the modern web of motor vehicle regulations that every motorist is likely to get caught in it every time he drives to the grocery store." This notion is also reflected in a colloquial phrase that often circulates various law enforcement agencies. Quote, "If you can't find a reason to pull someone over, then you aren't trying hard enough." There is a wealth of jurisprudence and philosophical ideologies at play when discussing overregulation, which I will not get into in this episode. But the point is that even in an encounter where the officer's ill intentions are plainly on display, there are still legitimate legal defenses that would be difficult to disprove within a courtroom. Nonetheless, it is difficult to understand how refusing to provide identification in the absence of reasonable suspicion constitutes a safety concern for Trooper Van Ellen.
It's my constitutional
right. For my safety, if I ask you, first off, I just wanted to have a conversation with you, letting you know, instead of having a conversation at 65 mile an hour, that my radar was flashing, I was trying to catch somebody up there, right?
Not only is Trooper Van Ellen openly admitting that she only stopped the individual to have a conversation with him, but she also admitted to abandoning her pursuit of a potentially criminal activity to do so.
Okay, that's my God-given right to protect the safety of the community. When somebody's doing 80 up there, they're normally zigzagging out of traffic. That makes it unsafe for a 92-year-old grandma. And I don't like that because my mother drives these roads, okay? So are you on paper?
Am I on paper?
Yeah.
As far as what, parole or probation? I do not have to identify myself. I don't. I've not committed a crime.
I don't think you have any Fourth Amendment rights if you're on paper.
As is the case in many other states, individuals in Nevada who have been convicted of a felony may have certain civil liberties revoked, such as the right to vote, bear arms, or the right to hold public office, as dictated in the Nevada state constitution. Nevada used to have one of the most complicated civil rights restoration schemes in the country, in which the loss and restoration of civil rights depended upon the nature of an individual's crime and overall criminal record. But in May of 2019, the Nevada legislature passed Nevada Assembly Bill 431, which dramatically simplified the system and loosened the state's grip on the liberties of those who have been previously convicted. All that said, there are many crimes which can result in a citizen being placed on probation, and that does not necessarily mean that the citizen automatically loses all of their rights. The rights protected under the Fourth and Fifth Amendments are not subject to revocation based on criminal history. Anyone who is not currently incarcerated is entitled to Fourth Amendment protections, and all citizens, regardless of their criminal past or current level of incarceration, are entitled to Fifth Amendment protections.
I don't have to disclose anything, and if you really want to go down that road, no, I'm not on probation or parole. Just to satisfy your need to go ahead and pry information from me. I have the right to drive on public roadways in the U.S. without any infringement upon me or a papers check.
I just wanted to have a conversation with you.
And I'm just letting you know that you're an officer of the law and you're supposed to uphold it. So you shouldn't be speeding or tailgating. If I tailgated you, you would have pulled me over immediately.
But you had no idea what I was doing.
If you really had an emergency, the second you got around me, you would have took off to go get that person, but you didn't.
No, because I felt like I owed you an explanation.
Okay, what's more important, giving me an explanation or protecting the roads and safety as you're so stating you're trying to uphold?
Oh, and by the way, Van Ellen.
That's fine.
And my P number is 483 for the record.
No, that's fine.
Yeah, but we're just waiting on Sergeant.
No, that's fine. Sergeant can come out. Not a problem.
The trooper and the citizen continue their banter, and eventually a sergeant arrives on the scene.
Hello, Sergeant Kelly, Highway Patrol. How you doing today?
I've been better. I'm a little bit upset at the fact that your officer is stating the claims that she's stating. It's very unprofessional and upsetting that an officer of the law can't give me the NRS code that apparently I'm violating, but then she tells me I have not committed a crime or a charge, so I do not have to identify myself. And if she really felt that concerned for her safety, she would have stepped away from my window and she would have backed up and waited until you, her supervisor, came to assess the situation. Obviously, she's still standing there having a full conversation with me for 8 minutes. She obviously does not have a concern for her safety. She just wants to do a papers check, because I know when you run the ID, it goes into the database and it shows that I had an interaction with law enforcement. And I'm not having that on my record, so I do not have to declare my identity because I have not committed a crime. I'm not under arrest.
You're right. You're not under arrest at the moment, but you were detained.
She never stated that, officer.
All right. Anytime an emergency vehicle stops you, you are detained. Okay, just so you know.
That's not true.
You may not be under arrest, but you are detained at that moment.
But I still do not have to present my ID. I still do not have to present my ID.
Technically, by law, you don't have to present your ID.
Thank you for stating that.
But by law, you do have to provide your name.
No, I do not.
Okay, I'm not.
That's preventing identity. That's giving it.
I'm not going to argue with you. After speaking with her, you're free to go at the moment.
Okay.
But for future reference, you do have to state your name.
Okay, and for future reference, you need to advise your officer that just because she's a law enforcement official, if I had tailgated her the way she tailgated me, you guys would have pulled me over in a heartbeat.
I'm not going to argue. I wasn't there. I didn't see that.
Okay.
After speaking with her, you're free to go.
Can I have your badge number, please?
214.
Okay. I'll be making a formal complaint since you do not want to go ahead and reprimand your officer for the fact that she was driving unsafely.
What I do with my officer is a personnel matter, which is not public record. Just so you know.
And like I said, I will go to your superiors, but thank you. I know I'm free to go. I'm just stating for the record that I will be making a formal complaint because you refuse to go ahead and let your officer know that she does not have the authority to tailgate or to speed unless it is an emergency.
Okay, I'm not going to debate any of that with
That's fine. I'll go on my merry way. You have a nice day, officer.
Use the shoulder here to get up to speed, merge over my square. Just be careful, okay?
Yep.
As mentioned at the beginning of this episode, I was unable to locate any follow-up information for this interaction, but it appears as though the citizen was allowed to go free without further incident. It is also unclear whether the citizen proceeded with filing a formal complaint against the trooper.
Man, them
Overall,
niggas need to
Trooper
lose their
Van Allen
heads.
gets an F for detaining a citizen to have a conversation, attempting to identify that citizen without reasonable suspicion, and displaying a fundamental misunderstanding of constitutional protections. It appears as though much of this interaction and Trooper Van Allen's policing tactics were dictated by her emotions, not the law, and much of the trooper's actions were far outside the bounds of her authority. Like any other job, law enforcement officers must adhere to the guidelines associated with their profession, and retain the mental capacity to separate their emotions from their duties. While there should be some level of discretion afforded to officers in the field, that discretion should never be compromised by the officer's emotional status or psychological dispositions. Trooper Van Allen would do well to brush up on the basics of policing and become more acquainted with the protections guaranteed to all citizens by the very Constitution that she swore an oath to uphold. The citizen gets an A-, because although he was mistaken about the language of the Fifth Amendment, he maintained a collected and relatively articulate demeanor, remained vigilant in reserving his constitutional rights, and rightfully questioned the legitimacy of Trooper Van Allen's conduct. If there is one silver lining to this interaction, it is that the citizen was ultimately allowed to go free and intended to file a complaint against the trooper. The citizen's legal knowledge served him well during this encounter, and even if he was wrong about certain legal principles, the ones that he was right about were invoked efficiently. While I recommend that the citizen also re-examine the protections granted by the Constitution, I also commend him for his conversational agility and legal awareness. This interaction highlights the fact that even a surface-level understanding of laws and civilian rights can serve to protect citizens against misconduct. And I encourage all citizens to gain a basic understanding of their local laws and the rights guaranteed to them under the Constitution. Let us know if there is an interaction or legal topic you would like us to discuss in the comments below. Thank you for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more police interaction content.
Oh no, it's goodies! It's time for you to get your goodies taken. Oh.